expert in Italian wines, culture, history, food. He was a Latin and Greek professor at St. Peter's in Jersey City. We had a long lunch today with some other wines. It gets jumbled. I thought I'd start out and tell you a little bit about Valpolicella and Amarone and the base of the wines that we're going to drink tonight. So Valpolicella means the valley of the many cellars. So there's a lot of wine cellars in the area of Verona. Valpolicella is made up of basically 3 grapes. Corvina, which is the main grape and the backbone, rich in tannins, very firm, cherry scent, and it makes up a large portion of Valpolicella wines. The second grape that's always there is Rondinella. Rondinella has a little bit more color and a little bit more scent than Corvina, so it's a great blend. Together they must make up 60% of Valpolicella. The other percentage can be Molinara, which is typically the grape that they use, the third grape. Valpolicella started, by all accounts, the Romans, monks. It was Ricciotto de Valpolicella, so it was a sweet wine. And the reason they started sweet is that they needed a lot of sugar and a lot of alcohol to handle the travels of the days. You know, they didn't have refrigerated trucks and refrigerated warehouses, so sweet wines with high alcohol content held up very well. The style of making the wine, Valpolicella stuff, the Ricciotto, was passamento. And what that means is they left the grapes to dry after harvesting. And they lose 30 to 50% of the weight. So basically all the water evaporates and you have this very, very, very high fruit concentration. Well, the theory has it, and I guess no one will be exactly sure, that a couple of monks, I think that they were drinking a lot of Ricciotto, and they lost track of one of the barrels. And one of the barrels was set aside, and either through the heat of the summer, some fermentation began to take place in the barrel again, and it fermented to dryness. So you had this sweet, this fruitiness on your mouth that finished dry, unlike the Ricciotto. So the monks, they found the wine, and they called it Ricciotto Amaro, bitter Ricciotto. Okay, today it's known as Amarone della Valpolicella. Okay, so the Amarone wine is made from dried grapes. Totally, all the grapes are all dried. Then, after they're dried for 100 to 120 days, they're pressed and then they're vinified and aged. And what happens is, as the grapes dry, there's this botrytis, which is a mold. They call it noble rot, which kind of attacks the grapes. And it attacks the grapes in a good way, and it can be a bad way. So there's a fine line. When the botrytis attacks the grape, it changes tartaric acid into glycerol, which is like a syrup. So you get that syrupy coating on your mouth from the botrytis. And oftentimes the winemakers say the richness and roundness in Amarone is from the botrytis. You're starting with a Prosecco, and I'm going to let Tony describe the Prosecco to you before we get started, and we're going to start with the first course shortly. Thank you for coming.
Treviso is where Prosecco wine comes from, right? The hills around Treviso. And it's made from the ancient Roman Prosecco vine. They're allowed to blend a few things in with it. Most of them make it from 100% Prosecco. It's very versatile, very summery drink. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the region of Verona, that Verona's in, Veneto, produces more wine, one region, than all of the United States. Over 84 million cases of wine are produced every year in the Veneto region. I want to tell you, Victor Rallo was speaking about this botrytis. What it does is it breaks the skins of the grapes and causes the liquid of the grapes to evaporate. The main attribute of botrytis is that it gives the impression of honey, and it's usually used in dessert wines. Now, 2003, even though the vintage was hot, a lot of people make very good Amarone, very good Ripasso. Why? Well, because they harvest the ears of the grapes. You see, the ears of the grapes, the top of the grape cluster, gets more sunlight, and since it's closer to the stems and the root structure of the plant, it picks up more energy from the plant. At the top, you may have twice the amount of sugar in the grape as on the bottom part of the cluster. Okay, so Amarone and Ripasso start with a selection of cutting just the ears of the best clusters. Rallo before mentioned that there was a grape variety called the Molinaro, which is falling out of fashion. They've been using Corvina, Molinaro, and Rondinella to make Valpolicella, Bardolino, Ripasso Valpolicella, Amarone della Valpolicella, Ricciotti della Valpolicella. Why all of a sudden is the Molinaro falling out of favor? Well, it's a very pale grape variety. It's almost like a rosé in color and in fruitiness. The reason it's falling out of favor is that wine writers, and therefore the public who read the wine writers, appreciate more inky looking, very dark wines. They feel if wine is a little pale in color, it lacks something. Well, it lacks color. It might not lack power, it might not lack gracefulness, but at any rate, Molinaro, people are using it less and less. I'll just be around, I'd like to find out which wines you like the best. And you can say all of them. Okay?